Buying a house can be an extremely stressful process if done incorrectly. There can be a ton of hiccups along the way that can cost buyers time as well as tons of money. With interest rates dropping seemingly every single week, people are in the mode of buying real estate right now and even trying to get into their first home. Well, in today's video, I'm going to be going over a step-by-step comprehensive guide of how you can buy your first property. I'll be sharing some tips and tricks along the way that can really help you save time as well as thousands of dollars. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is John, and thank you so much for tuning in. Our goal here is to help you plan, save, and invest for the future. So with that, let's get right into the video. All right, so the first step in buying your dream home is actually smashing the like button for the YouTube algorithm. What this allows you to do is actually purchase a home without even needing to talk to anybody. You simply go ahead, you tap that like button, and then boom, you have your dream home at the exact price that you wanted. No, I'm just kidding. The real first step in purchasing this dream home of yours is to understand how much can you afford, and really, can you afford a home at all? There are a few things that you're going to want to know when budgeting for this home, like what your monthly income is, what your credit score is, what your debt to income ratio is, of course, any outstanding debts that you may have. All of these are very important to know before even starting. Something I can't stress enough is trying to get your credit score as high as possible. This will get you much better rates and allow you to save thousands of dollars across your entire mortgage. Typically, lenders and banks are looking for people who have above a 720 or 740 credit score. This is when banks and lenders will really start working with you in terms of the rates that they give you as well as the fees that they charge. So once you've gotten your credit score a little bit better, or if you already have a great credit score already, next you're going to want to understand how much can you afford. Typically, I like to look at my debt to income ratio when purchasing homes. So you're going to want to make sure that your debt to income ratio is about 25 to 30%, meaning you don't want this mortgage and principal and interest to take up more than 30% of your total take-home pay. What many people seem to forget is that home ownership is not just principal and interest. You have those two things, as well as taxes, insurance, maintenance, maybe you have HOA fees. All of this encompasses total home ownership. Step number 2 is understanding down payments as well as closing costs. Typically, there's going to be two different types of mortgages that you can go ahead and take out. There's going to be a conventional mortgage or an FHA loan. Now, typically, 90% of people that are watching this video are going to be getting something known as a conventional mortgage. What this is something that's not sponsored or backed by the US government, but is instead with a bank, a credit union, or any sort of lender. Now, normally with these conventional mortgages, you will need to come up with a minimum of 10% down. Now, to avoid something known as PMI, which is something I'm going to talk about here in just a moment, you're going to need to put down at least 20%. Okay, the second type of loan is an FHA loan. Now, these are going to have much less restrictive requirements when it comes down to credit and down payments, whereas before you needed 10% down, now you're only going to need a minimum of 3.5% down. But please beware that if you put 3.5% down, you are going to be seen as riskier to the government who is backing these loans. If we think about this, if you put 3.5% down on, let's say, a $250,000 home, this is around $8,750. This sounds great. You only need $8,700 to get a $250,000 property. But there are some downsides to these FHA loans as well. So for example, if you put this 3.5% down, you're going to have much higher interest rates as well as higher fees when you go to close the loan. This is all due to the fact that you're seen as a riskier buyer instead of somebody who's putting down, let's say, 20%. Now, something that I touched on a bit earlier was known as PMI, which is just private mortgage insurance. This is extra insurance from the bank or the lender ensuring that you're going to pay, and it gets added on to your total monthly fee. So if you don't put down a minimum of 20% down, you're going to be paying this PMI every single month until you get to the 20% total down payment. Now, my recommendation with PMI is to try and avoid this at all costs, because it's not going towards any sort of principal that you're going to start gaining more equity into the house. It's just an extra fee that you're going to be needing to pay on top of everything else that you're paying just for simple insurance. Okay, so something else that we've talked about here is closing costs. Now, a lot of people think that when they go to purchase a home that they only need a down payment, and this couldn't be further from the truth. There's also things known as closing costs. These typically range between 2 and 5% of the total loan that you're taking out. So this can definitely add up to thousands of dollars more that you need to save up just because of these closing costs. So for example, if you're taking out a $300,000 loan, you can expect to possibly pay $6,000 or even more in just closing costs. Some examples of these closing costs would be things like your appraisal fee, credit report fee, an origination fee from the lender. All of these are going to be extra fees that you're going to be needing to pay before you close on the loan. Please, please, please do not loop in these closing costs into your mortgage. All you're now doing is paying more for these closing costs than you originally intended. So instead of paying $2,000 or $4,000, now that's getting looped into the loan and you're paying interest on that every single month. Many people don't actually know that a lot of these lender fees are negotiable. So you are able to either negotiate the fees that you have or shop around different lenders to ensure that you're getting the best rate as well as the best fee structure possible. This can immediately save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars just because you went and looked around. All right, so the next and third step is going to be getting a pre-approval. Now, a pre-approval is simply just from a lender, a bank, or a credit union telling you how much you qualify for in terms of a loan. Really, what pre-approval allows you to do is to get under contract as quickly as possible. It shows the seller that you're a serious buyer and that you can actually afford the home, as well as that you're in good financial standing. Now, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting this pre-approval done before you start looking at homes, because there's nothing worse than going to look at $5 million homes and then realizing that you can't afford it. During this pre-approval process, they're going to be looking at a variety of things, whether that be your credit score, your income, your expenses. To be more specific though, because I want to make this as comprehensive as possible, here are some examples of things that they'll need from you when you look for a pre-approval. First, they're gonna wanna see a few years of tax returns. Really, they're just ensuring that you are making the money that you say you are, as well as that you have some sort of stable income. Second, they're gonna want to see multiple pay stubs, especially now during the pandemic. They may even ask you for pay stubs later in the process just to ensure that you still have a job. Third, they're gonna wanna see any sort of credit report that you have. Obviously, the higher the credit score, the better. Fourth, any bank statements. So they're gonna wanna see here multiple months of bank statements, really to ensure, once again, that you have money in these bank accounts that's coming in consistently from a job and not just somebody depositing money into your account and then when the loan closes, they just take it out. Fifth, they're gonna take a look at any sort of monthly expenses that you have as well. So these are all other expenses other than housing. And then sixth and finally are anything else that you may own or owe. So this can be other assets, for example, if you own another home, or any stock market accounts that you may have. Now, a big note here is just because you get approved for, let's say, a $400,000 or $500,000 loan, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out and purchase a $400,000 or a $500,000 home. You're going to want to make sure that you're sticking to that debt to income ratio that we were talking about before to ensure that you're not becoming house poor. Okay, so after you've been pre-approved, the fourth step is to understand your criteria and to be very specific. How many bedrooms do you want to have? What area do you want to live in? Do you need a pool? Do you need to have central air conditioning? I hope you would. All of these things are going to be listed out so that you go into looking at these homes very, very focused and you have a plan going in. So after you and your spouse, or just you possibly, have established a criteria, now is the time to go ahead and find a real estate agent. A great real estate agent can be a huge difference for you because they're going to understand things like what things are selling for in the area and for in terms of, let's say, price per square foot. They're going to know if you're getting a great deal or maybe it's a little overpriced. All of these things become very beneficial and very valuable when it comes to actually looking at homes. Okay, so you've been pre-approved, you've found your agent. Now, congratulations, now you're gonna start looking into homes. When you begin to look into homes, one thing I would say and point out is don't just fall in love with the first house that you find. Really go out there and search and look at a ton of different properties because you really don't know what you have and haven't seen until you've gone ahead and searched around the area. I've seen tons of times where people will go, they'll find the first house that they like, and boom, they'll make an offer. Take your time and really make sure that you're in love with the house before going ahead and making an offer. For example, maybe you walk through one house and you love the pool, or in another one you really like that they're bigger bedrooms, or maybe you love smashing the like button for the YouTube algorithm. All of these things can be huge factors when looking into homes. Thanks again. Okay, step 7 is to now make an offer. So after touring a bunch of homes, you found the one for you. Now let's go ahead and put this in writing. When making an offer, the first thing I would say to do is really make sure that you're comfortable with this offer. I've seen a lot of times where people think, oh, if I just offered $5,000 more, I would have gotten the house. Make sure that you're making an offer that you're really comfortable with and that you're really looking to buy the house. They may not come back to you if you've lowballed them or they don't really like the offer at all. So there's a couple things when you're making this offer that you want to note. First, be comfortable with it. Second, put any contingencies in there, like for example, it being contingent on an inspection. Maybe you want it to be contingent on things that they fix, or you want them to keep certain things in the house. All of these should be written in the offer letter prior to you submitting it. Okay, step number 8 is to set up your inspections and your appraisals. Congratulations, your offer has been accepted. Now is time to ensure what you're seeing is actually what you're getting. Now, an inspector is a licensed professional who's going to be able to tell you everything about the property, good and bad. This can be very useful when it comes down to final negotiations because now you know things that maybe you want taken off. For a personal example, I actually had an inspection done and found out that there was a ton of problems in the property I was looking at. There was some roofing issues, there was some issues with insulation, all of these different problems that we didn't see immediately when we looked at the property, and we were actually able to get the seller to pay for all of these repairs and maintenance bills, not out of our pocket. So this was able to save us thousands of dollars simply by having this inspection done. Now, when it comes to getting an appraisal, especially in today's environment, these can be very, very important. This is really ensuring what you're paying is actually what the value of the house is. Right now, with this crazy real estate market going on, a lot of times appraisals are actually coming in a bit lower than what people are paying. So this cost difference has to be covered by somebody. So for example, if you think the house is worth $300,000, but then the appraisal comes in at $290,000, somebody has to cover that $10,000 difference because now the lender is not going to lend on a $300,000 price anymore. So this is extremely important to make sure that you have your inspections and your appraisals set up so that you know exactly what you're getting into when it gets down to final negotiation. Okay, so once you've gotten the inspection done, the appraisal has been done, and all the negotiation has now happened, now it's time for you to take a final walkthrough with your agent. This is really just ensuring that everything that they said they were going to do or that you knew about that they didn't handle has been done or not done. Okay, so the 10th and final step is now it's time to close on the property. A few days before you're supposed to close on the house, there's going to be something known as a closing disclosure sent to you. This is really just all of your final numbers on the property. So whether that be how much you need for a down payment, your insurance, your taxes, all of that stuff is going to be included in this closing disclosure. And you're going to want to make sure that you go over this very carefully, making sure that the numbers tie out to what your lender had said. This way, when you get to the closing table, everything has pretty much been handled and you just have to go and sign papers. With that, congratulations, you now own a home. Thank you so much for tuning in to this video. I really appreciate it. If you liked the video, please make sure to drop a like and to also subscribe for more content. And with that, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.